Welcome back to the interactive interview. It is my honor and privilege to present to you Sting. Sting, how you doing?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
We're doing really great. It's been a long time that we wanted to have you on, and you are probably the most requested guest that we've ever had.
Wow.
And we've had everybody from Flair to Savage, so.
Wow. Well, would you say the same thing to Ric Flair if he were on the other line?
I didn't say it to him, and I don't think he liked that I didn't say it to him. So.
All right. Good, honest answer.
All right. So the first question we have for you is, how have you been, and what have you been up to since your last appearance with TNA?
Wow. That's a general question. I've been really, really good, and I've been really, really busy. I'm busier now with my life than I was, when I was on the road, full-time wrestling. So, just busy with life, being a dad, being a husband, and really involved with my church, and a little bit of wrestling here and there. And I've done a movie based on my life, and so I'm trying to develop a piece of property. There's all kinds of things I'm doing right now.
We'll get into the movie in just a little bit, but we usually go in order, so let's start out with this one. Were you a wrestling fan growing up?
No. When I grew up in Southern California, and although, I have people that are saying that they saw wrestling in the little town that I grew up in, they saw wrestling on TV, and claimed that I was with them watching wrestling. And I'm just finding that this is amazing because it's all kind of new information. Don't you remember we were kids? We used to watch, and you know what? I don't remember seeing any wrestling on TV ever. And it wasn't until I got into the competitive bodybuilding scene at about age 21, and then co-owned a Gold's Gym in Southern California, and then this guy named Terry Bollea used to come in the gym to work out.
Yes.
Some of the people would freak out. You know who that is? And I didn't know.
Oh.
And then they'd say, that's Hulk Hogan. Yeah, he's the pro wrestler. And, I knew him from the Rocky movie, but I didn't know anything about the wrestling part of it. So, for whatever reason, I was oblivious to it. So, I didn't watch.
Where did you go for your in-ring training?
I went to Red Bastien. Do you know of Red?
Yes, I do.
Well, yeah, Red Bastien had a camp in Northridge that I went to. It was the one and only time that he had a camp, a wrestling camp, and I went through his camp for 3 months, and then got myself booked with Jerry Jarrett.
In our interview with Larry Zbyszko, he said that you, quote, stole the name of a rock star guy. Where did the name Sting actually come from?
You know what? I think based on, what I thought my style was in the ring, and actually it was Stinger.
Right.
And people just called me Sting. And that's just kind of the way it happened. It was either or. It was Sting or Stinger, and yes, I knew of the singer. He was with the Police then and all that.
Right.
And I don't believe that it would be a copy.
Right.
So.
Early in your career, you teamed with the Ultimate Warrior. But what are your thoughts on Mr. Warrior today?
Well, he was definitely on the cutting edge when we started. He had a build, a physique that was, not many guys looked quite like him. And he was a real intense kind of a guy. The way he looked physically is the way he was even mentally,
Right.
And just different philosophies on wrestling and different philosophies on life. That he just, he looked at things in a completely different way than I did. So, but he made his name and found a niche for himself there for a little bit, and I'm happy for him.
Of course, you won the UWF tag titles with him, but you also won the AWF tag titles with a guy we've lost in the past 10 years, Eddie Gilbert. What are your memories of Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert?
Eddie taught us a lot in the beginning, He really worked with us a lot and tried to teach us a lot of the psychology and timing of the moves and when to talk, when not to talk, and how to do it. He taught us an awful lot, really. And I actually started to learn a lot more and at an accelerated Starrcade after Hellwig and I split off. He went to World Class, and I stayed with the UWF.
Right.
And I started to really, pick things up at that point.
It was your 45-minute draw with Ric Flair that seemed to break you open into the business for the mainstream. What are your memories of that match, and what are your opinions on Ric Flair? I know that's a pretty big question.
Yeah, and I've been vocal about that for years, and I acknowledge the fact and give Rick so much credit.
Right.
And, I love the guy, and, he had a choice to either make me or, break me or just make me look mediocre, and he chose to make me look really good. And I think that, he just felt that there was a chemistry there, and he had the ability to see beyond what I could see, and so I just followed his lead, and, he kind of took me under his wing a little bit and really showed me the ropes and taught me a lot. That's when, talk about learning.
Right.
Man, in the first 12 months that I was in storyline and in matches with Ric Flair, that first 12 months I learned more. I mean, it was unbelievable. I was light years ahead of where I was in a quick period of time, and it was all because of Rick. And so I give him all the credit in the world, and I have all the respect in the world for him. And what do I think about him? I mean, I'll always have a soft spot, in my heart for Ric Flair, and I think that he's a breed set apart from anyone. I don't know how he does it, man. He's still going, still taking bumps, still doing a lot of his signature moves, and, he still has charisma and still has a following, and he has, talk about longevity, wow.
Did you read his book?
No.
No, I have not read it? Okay. Of all your matches with Rick, what would you say your favorite was? I know that's a question coming in from the forums from our listener, Poncho Jones.
Yeah, I can't, there's no way for me to say that one match. It would have to be between a couple of matches. It would be the one that we just talked about,
right?
The Clash of Champions, or
right.
the Great American Bash in Baltimore, Maryland, and after I had come off of, 5 months out with knee and
right.
major reconstructive surgery and all that. So I would say one of those two matches, and it's tough to say which one.
You just mentioned the major reconstructive surgery. Exactly what happened with the cage? Because I had seen it, but I was a little confused on exactly how you got injured.
Well, I had, in wrestling, when you just, a lot of times it's just hurry up and wait.
Right.
Especially TV taping, you can get out in the ring and you can do something, and your joints and your muscles, you're warmed up and loose and ready to go. And then you go back and you sit sometimes for hours. And, you got to stay limber and you got to stay stretched and all that. And probably a week or two earlier, I did a move with Lex Luger in Greensboro again, as a matter of fact. And I landed wrong, and I felt something kind of go in my knee, and I thought, wow, so I ended up taking some anti-inflammatories.
Yes.
And the anti-inflammatories worked great. I didn't hardly feel any pain at all. And by the time I got to Corpus Christi a couple weeks later, I was cold and not warmed up and in a pair of cowboy boots and street clothes. And I was supposed to run down the aisle and climb over, the tubed cage. It wasn't like a chain link fence type of deal. It was a different kind of a cage. But I was supposed to climb over this thing, and I just ran to jump, and I remember Doug Dillinger, and it seemed like a couple other guys possibly there, and kind of holding me down. And just as I jumped, I just felt something snap, and I literally thought that a fan took a bat or a pipe and whacked me in the knee as I went by. And I looked back and saw that it was impossible, that nobody could have done that. And then I reached down and felt my knee and realized, I knew exactly what it was. It's amazing, because I ended up hobbling down on the floor and telling Dillinger and Wahoo and some of the other guys that were there that my patella tendon was severed, and and I couldn't. I was totally, helpless pretty much. So I was hobbling around on one leg, and Rick, I think, was confused and thought that I was confused, so he climbed back over the cage and started coming at me, and I told Wahoo and everybody, said, keep him away from me because my knee is gone. And he jumped on me 2 times, and, from the knee down, it was just like my leg was going in like a 360, It was kind of hideous to think about, really. But yeah,
Joe Theismann kind of.
tendon was severed in half, and that's what it was.
That's nothing like what Sid went through, is it?
No, Sid actually broke a bone.
Right.
After your injury, you feuded with Lex Luger. But what's your opinion on Lex?
Well, I think Lex is trying to come back and trying to, repair a lot of damage in his life,
Right.
And a lot of stuff. He's been through a lot, and I'm there for him, and he knows that, and I would make myself available at the drop of a hat, and he knows that it's a phone call away, anything that I could ever do, and he knows that, and I've made it very clear to him, and he's trying, but he's still on the mend.
Right. What is your opinion of the whole Elizabeth thing? I know we had Jake Roberts on, and he was not exactly compassionate about it. So.
Well, first question, is Jake compassionate about anything or anyone? I have not heard one compassionate statement come out of his mouth in, I don't know how long.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I guess that kind of answers the question right there.
Yeah. Anyway, and you know what? I care for Jake too, but he just every time I read about the guy, he just seems to blast everybody, including me. So.
Yeah, he always seems to have his foot in his mouth somewhere.
Yeah, but that's okay. What was the original question now?
What was actually you answered it. You answered it sufficiently. The next question I have for you is: what are your memories of working Ravishing Rick Rude?
I have good memories of working with Rick. We had some really good matches, and I just think that Rick was one of those kind of guys that had the ability to do what his job was really well.
Uh-huh.
And, if he was, supposed to try to make the people hate him, he did a good job of it. He was able to do that.
How about one of the guys that Harley Race called a pain in the butt? How about Big Van Vader?
I had great matches with Van Vader. I used to love working with the big guys, and he was difficult in the beginning. I think that I was, probably solely responsible for taming him because he was just, coming out of Japan full time, and he had this Japanese style, and he was, he outweighed me by 200 pounds. So, 180 or whatever, but we had good matches. We ended up getting a pretty good chemistry and pretty good timing and, decent storylines, and so I enjoyed working with him, really.
In your time at WCW, you saw a lot of different bosses come and go. Were there any bosses that you disagreed with the direction of?
Well, probably most of them, because if you think about it, we were a wrestling organization, owned by the Crockett's and Dusty Rhodes and
Right.
Ric Flair and all those kind of guys sort of running the show and the creative part of it and the writing and all that. And so it was wrestlers that produced the TV show. And then when we got involved with Turner, it flip-flopped, and all of a sudden the suits were producing wrestling. And it took a long time for the dust to settle. And, we had guys put in that CEO position that really had nothing to do with wrestling and didn't even understand it. And, from attorneys to, Pizza Hut guys. I mean, it's like, can we get somebody who loves wrestling and cares about wrestling to run this company?
Right.
Not a friend of a friend of a friend and then part of the Turner family and, all that kind of stuff. And really, it wasn't until Eric Bischoff came in.
Right.
That's, in my opinion, and, Eric has heat with so many people, but you know what? I was with him. Pretty hands-on, and we had a really good working relationship, and, I watched him. I watched the way he operated in the beginning, and I give him buku amounts of credit because, you know, the Nitro show that he developed.
Did you think that was going to work?
Nitro?
Yeah, going head-to-head with the WWF.
Yeah, man, I felt really good about it. I mean, no, I put it this way. I thought that there was a light at the end of the tunnel for the first time ever.
Wow. Wow. One of the other things Eric Bischoff did, he brought in a lot of the WWF guys that were available at the time. Early on, it was Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan. Did you feel that when those guys were brought in that they were going to take your spot or anything like that?
Oh, yeah, and they did. Yeah, when Hulk Hogan came in, you know, it was Sting step aside, and, you know, and that's the way it was. But you know what, I was okay with that because it was Hulk Hogan. You know, I mean, yeah, I worked hard, and yeah, I carried the WCW banner all those years, and, you know, worked hard. I never left and always stayed, and the flagship, whatever they thought of me as.
Right.
But Hulk Hogan was Hulk Hogan. I mean, let's face it, you know, he had gone beyond what I ever did at that particular time. And so I was, you know, I took that. It wasn't like it was a cakewalk for me to take it, but I did. And then when Savage came in, you know, it was, oh, Savage is here, step aside again. And that one I had a little bit more of a struggle with.
Right. Right. How do you get along with Randy?
Well, you know, it's been obviously years now since I've seen him, but, you know, while we were working together and all that, we got along pretty good. I mean, I think, you know, we all had our whoop-de-doos, our ups and downs along the way.
Right.
You know, where, you know, we disagreed or whatever, but for the most part, I get along with Randy.
Right. All right. When most people think of Hulk Hogan and WCW, they remember the Hollywood character. The Hollywood character obviously feuded with Sting a lot, but Hogan has been quoted many times over the years saying that a lot of the WCW guys backstage were not happy with the NWO's popularity. Were you one of the people that were unhappy that the quote-unquote bad guys were getting cheered?
No.
No?
I wanted to see, I wanted to be not a second-class citizen.
Right.
So when the NWO was born, I remember Kevin and Scott, they shot, you know, one of the first little vignettes that they'd ever shot, and I think we were in Orlando, and man, they showed that thing, and, you know, in the studio, and Eric was there, and I watched it, and I went, wow. I mean, I knew that our company was changing, wrestling was changing, and I knew that they were on the right track, and I knew that I had to get on the right track, too.
Right.
You know, I knew at that point, and Kevin remembers this, you know, he told me in later years, he told me that day, he said, you looked at me and said something like, you know, wow, it's, you know, now what am I going to do? You know? So that was what really started my gears turning on how I was going to change and adapt.
You'd done the Crow type of character at around this time, but did you have any reservations about donning it?
No, I won't say that it wasn't a little bit scary, but no, I didn't have any reservations on it because wrestling was changing and the fans were changing. The NWO was born, and I also had lots of experience with Hulk being his tag team partner, and when he was still red and yellow, and
right.
And you know, and I was still had my colors and all that, and you know, we were the first time we ever tagged. You know, I remember going to San Francisco, and man, Hulk, you know, he got. This is me stepping aside for him. I made, you know, the bad guys, the heels went to the ring first, and then I went to the ring next, and then Hulk made the grand entrance last,
right.
And he got just booed out of the building. And then it happened quite a few times after that, and I think that's what, you know, he realized it was time for him to change, and I knew that time was coming for me too. It was definitely going to hit, so
right.
I was okay with it. I wanted to try something, you know, more cutting edge.
And one of the cutting-edge things that WCW introduced that and ended up in tragedy eventually was the rafter drop. Were you trained for the rafter drop?
Was I what?
Trained for the rafter drop.
Well, my training happened the very first day that I did it, which was Chicago at the United Center. And we had a couple stunt guys there working with me, and I rappelled 4 times earlier in the day to kind of practice and get ready for it. And I actually did some rappelling with the same stunt guy out here in California, off of some cliffs and rocks, practicing and getting ready. But the United Center, it was 297 feet. That thing, that was so high that when we were up there, trying to talk to the guys on the ground earlier in the day, they couldn't hear us. We had to talk with the walkie-talkies. So it was high, and I was having a tough time with it. It wasn't working very well, and it was like, I came back and said, Eric, I can't do this. And he says, what do you mean? I said, I can't. I tried it 4 times. It's just, it's not working very good. I was spinning. I kept spinning real bad. And the stunt guy that we used kept assuring me that the reason why I was doing it is because I wasn't just sliding fast enough down the rope. I was sort of, crimping with my hand, and because it's scary, man.
Right. Absolutely.
He said, look, if you just go down at one speed, and just control your speed on the way down, but just go down a little faster, you're not going to spin. So, the only other chance that I'd have to try it again would be live.
Right.
And I knew that it was, make or break. If I ended up spinning, I knew that was going to be the end of the career, and, the laughing stock, and it would have been over.
Right.
So,
having done it, do you see how the tragedy happened with Owen?
This is a tough thing for me to comment on. I don't know what happened up there, but I can tell you this. I've heard what happened up there, and I don't even want to say. But the night that we did it in Chicago at the United Center, it was as hairy as can possibly be. The cue comes, and the crowd is as loud as you can imagine, and the sound just travels up. It's deafening. And then, we're talking to each other, and then you're screaming at each other up there. The pyro's going off, the lights, and some of you can't even think straight. And you can't even hear yourself think. That's how chaotic it is up there. And then I stepped over, and when I stepped over, we had things set up backwards. So while I was standing on the edge, we had to flip the rope around and reweave it through. And I'm telling you, it was like if I'd have stepped over and done it, the same thing would have happened. So, it was scary, and we did it a couple of different ways, and it didn't matter which way of the two that we did it, it was always scary.
Your memories of the biggest match in the history of WCW, yourself and Hollywood Hogan at Starrcade 97.
That was a really weird time, because I felt the tension of WCW, the whole company. There was huge tension now, and everybody's motives were, they weren't, the creative juices weren't flowing like they were, because everybody was worried about themselves, and it was, Hulk was struggling with, how he wanted to do it and how he wanted to put me over and all that, and he just sort of, it was like there was a lot of closed doors meetings with him and Eric all the way up until just, not too long before we actually walked into the ring. And, I kept saying, what's the big deal, man? I kept talking to Eric saying, is it, does he not want to put me over? Does he not want to do it? Or, does he want to win? Just tell me. Just so I know,
Right.
Just so I know.
Right.
And Eric was trying to be reassuring, and but what he was he'd go to Hulk, and then he'd come back to me, and then he'd go to Hulk, and he'd come back to me. And I'm like,
he was the middleman. Yeah.
Yeah, can't we just talk about this all together and just do business? Whatever the business is going to be, let's just come up with an answer and do it. And I came in and I was ready, even though I hadn't been in the ring, and I was a little rusty, and thinking, I hope I can pull this off, and
right.
And I knew also that the build-up was so big, and, I was worried that the match would not be able to follow the build-up.
Right.
And, of course, in my opinion, it didn't, His knee was real bad, and my personal life was all messed up, so, I'm taking some of the credit too for the way things went, but also there was a mess up with the count and the referee, and
Right.
it's like, what was that all? How could that have failed? Where was the mistake there? So and then it makes everybody second guess. Like, oh, did the referee get paid off or what?
Right.
I mean, I don't believe that happened, but at least I don't want to believe it. But at the time, when you're going through it, your mind just starts going everywhere, and you're thinking, what is going on here, man? I mean, why can't this just be like it was, easy and fun?
Right.
I mean, for everybody, because everybody was having fun,
Is that what happened in WCW? Did it ultimately become more like that, more out of control, and more everybody for themselves?
Yeah. I really believe that.
Mm.
And the one thing that I learned, in life period, but especially in wrestling, that if the wheel is not broken, don't try to fix it.
Right.
You can always keep on improving and adapting, but don't try to just totally repair and fix something that's already working, and that's what we did.
Right. What is your opinion of the Wolfpac, the Red and Black? Did you enjoy being a part of that?
Yeah, that was fun. We had a good time doing that, and the crowd really did like that. I mean, I think it was kind of an angle that a lot of people looked at as being that's all they can think of, kind of a thing. Or, they're just going to try to make it look, they're going to repackage it and make it look a little bit different. And that's sort of what happened, but, the fans really, it seemed like they really dug it, man. I think they really liked it.
Mm.
And if we could have, kept on moving with that somehow, it would have been good. But again, we had everybody looking out for themselves and all these ulterior motives and, backstabbing. It all started to happen.
One of your biggest feuds as Red and Black's team was against Bret Hart. Now, how would you compare your matches against Bret versus those you had against Ric Flair?
Well, they can't be compared, really. I mean, you can have technically a phenomenal match with somebody, but if there's not a chemistry,
right,
then the chemistry and the psychology and two personalities that just really gel. I mean, it really works. Then you just can't beat that.
Mm.
So I just don't think that they can compare.
Absolutely. I'm not sure if you want to comment about this. I'm not sure if it's in your movie. I'm sure it probably will be. But when exactly did you find God?
No, I don't mind talking about that at all. It was August of 1998.
Hmm. And what led up to that? What happened?
Well, it was a lifestyle that I had while being on the road all those years, and that ultimately ended up me, we did our shows, we did our Nitro shows, and ultimately ended up with me drinking and, taking muscle relaxers and painkillers, and then, out of that, just watching every part of my life just get, out of control, Not just me and my lifestyle on the road.
Right.
But also just, my job, my career, my marriage, my family. I just felt like I was losing control over everything. I felt like I had control over everything for so long, and then it was just like, all the dirt, it just started to come to the surface, and it bothered me. I couldn't live with it. I couldn't live with myself.
Mm.
Because I was, I had a lifestyle on the road that definitely wasn't pleasing to my wife.
Right.
And, wasn't pleasing to God either. So
Absolutely.
I knew that, at that particular time in my life, I knew that, there wasn't a big pay-per-view or a big paycheck or a big contract for a psychologist or, any kind of power. I knew that there was nothing that was going to be able to fix it, and I actually believed in my heart that, the only way for me to be fixed would be to have something supernatural happen. And, I'm not talking, Close Encounters of the Third Kind or some weird, I'm talking about something supernatural that our maker. What I believe is our maker, and it's God.
Absolutely.
And until Jesus Christ entered into my life, and at least that I allowed him to enter in, and that's when things really started to change for me.
You returned to WCW. Actually, it was a little while after you returned to WCW. Vince Russo came in and went more for the crash style of TV.
Right.
What did you feel about Vince Russo?
Well, I struggled with him, and I told him that, a few times, that I just, we just have different opinions, and the shock and raunch is what Vince McMahon did to salvage his company and try to stay afloat, and it worked because, that's easy. It's just like, you know what the cheap pop is, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It was the cheap pop.
Well, that's what I describe it as too, easy.
It's just easy, every male in America is going to tune in to see, the girls doing the negligee matches and all that, and, and necrophilia angles, and,
Right.
Homosexual angles. They've done anything and everything you can possibly do, and, the world is going to they're going to tune into that. They just are, and that's just, unfortunately, that's the way it is. So, being a Ted Turner entity and more family-oriented and all that, thankfully we couldn't push the envelope as much as they could, but we still did. But anyway, yeah, I struggled with it. I didn't like it. I didn't agree with it, and I thought, this is just the cheap pop, and the cheap pop is cheap.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. In 2000, when Eric Bischoff and Russo returned, they feuded you with Vampiro. What was your memories and thoughts of Vampiro?
I'm trying to put it out of my mind.
I take it you weren't a fan of it?
I don't want to say that. And don't think that I'm just, trying to give you all the goody two shoes answers. I'm not. I don't harbor any bad feelings toward anyone that I ever worked with. I did, while I was going through it sometimes, but Vampiro was tough because I just felt that, they were adding somebody to the company that it was like, the gimmicks, there was this, like, so close and so, it was obvious, and then he was looking more and more like me as time went on, and then when they put us together, I did things with him and allowed certain things to happen in the storyline. Even like a little example would be, refer to me as Steve in this interview. Just say Steve. Like you really know me. Like you're getting into my inner psyche. And let's see if we can come from that angle. I was reaching, man. I was trying to do everything I could to try to make it work, because no matter what I think about him, or no matter what I think about being put in a storyline and an angle with him, the bottom line, I was in it, and I didn't want to, he's a reflection on me, or whether it works or not is a reflection on me.
Absolutely.
And I don't remember doing many angles that didn't work, but that one didn't work. And it bothered me.
You seemed to disappear in about mid 2000 until the end. Well, actually, let me throw this question to you. What did you think of what they did to Hogan at Bash at the Beach 2000?
Remind me, what was it?
That's when Jeff Jarrett laid down for him, and...
Yeah, I was going to say that was the Jeff Jarrett thing, yeah.
Yeah.
I was just so over it at the time, and just sick of all the crap.
Right.
And I looked at it as just being, more crap that wasn't going to help the company, wasn't going to help anyone. So I just threw my arms up in the air and just said, I'm not even going to worry about it.
The last Nitro, you wrestled Ric Flair. Did you think that was going to be your last match?
I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. It was emotional for me because I knew that it very well could be the last match ever. And when you think about how your wrestling career might end, you can never guess. And who would have ever guessed that one? Live simulcast, Cleveland and Panama City, and is it. And then you got, really it was almost like the enemy, The enemy had come into our camp and held us prisoner.
Right. Is that what it was like backstage?
Well, yeah, it was.
Wow.
I mean, there's just no other way to put it. It just was. I mean, I'm not saying that they were, abusive in any way. I mean, although I heard, a couple things, a couple stories, but, with me, they treated me great. They were nice and polite, although Shane wanted me to do this interview, and he didn't give it to me. Somebody else gave it to me, and I ended up changing it. And I said, you know what, I'm sorry, but I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. And
was it something obscene, or was it just something you didn't want to do?
Oh, no, it was nothing obscene. Nothing. It was just too generic,
Right.
And I made it. It was still generic the way I did it, but it was still, I wanted it to send some kind of a message to,
the audience.
Yeah, the hardcore WCW fans, and just,
Right.
After WCW ended, you made a few TNA appearances. What's your thoughts on that company?
I want them to work, and I want somebody to succeed out there. A lot of people have tried, and I do believe that you've got to be a Vince McMahon or a Ted Turner, or somebody that has a huge, gigantic
bankroll.
Yeah, a machine,
right.
With buku TV power to be ultra successful. But I'm hoping that somehow or another that the Jarretts and that whole crew over there, I'm hoping they'll do something. And I have a soft spot in my heart for them because of the fact that Jerry Jarrett gave me my break, and not only did he give me my break, but he also, when he found out how bad Hellwig and I were, how green we were, and he had to get rid of us, he didn't just get rid of us, he placed us. And he put us he called Bill Watts for us, and Bill took us. So I thought that was pretty cool, and that's why when they called me to do the first TNA show that I did, I was done with wrestling at the time, and I said no at first, and I thought, you know what, these guys gave me my break, Jerry did, so I did more than reconsider. I went and did it. So
absolutely. I'm sure you're aware of this, but you are one of the most talked about wrestlers on the internet, and there's always a rumor of some kind of return for you going around, and there is one now saying that you're going to return for SmackDown. So, care to take this one?
It's news to me.
That's kind of what I figured.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a movie coming out. I'm going to be getting a screener's copy of it. I can't wait to see it. What can you tell me about it?
Well, it's my life. It is, it's a movie that was not made for, the big screen. It was, this isn't like a rock movie.
Right.
This is like, this is my life. It's my testimony, really. And it takes place from the time I was a kid all the way up until present day. And I did put the wrestling tights on again. And TNA let us use their ring and some of their audience for some updated shots that we wanted to make it look as though it was around the same time as, the end of my career. And the shots look pretty good. And so we're happy with that and thankful that they let us do that. But it's really what happened to me as time went on, and until August of '98, when I realized that the money and the psychologists and the pay-per-views and the power and all that wasn't going to work anymore, and that I need something supernatural, and it is that. And then the miracles that I have experienced, since then.
Do you think there will be appeal to fans that might not be Christian? I mean, do you think they get something out of it too?
Because we have some authentic footage in there. We've got some, Hogan is in there. I'm wrestling him at that big Starrcade match. There's some footage of that, and there's, some stuff with all the NWO guys, and so there's authentic footage in there, yeah. And the stories of a couple of different reporters at different times in the movie are asking questions. and I'm answering the questions, and as I do, I reflect back, and then we look at the old footage, and then we combine it with the new. So, and it was made to be a tool for youth pastors and anyone that really wants to watch it. But it's Walmart, Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, and family Christian bookstores nationwide. You'll be able to get it there, and you can actually see a small trailer, a 2-minute trailer of the movie if you go to www.sting-themovie.com. You can watch a 2-minute trailer. It'll just give you a taste of what the movie's about.
Excellent, excellent. And if I can throw something in there, I know this is more of a documentary-style movie, but I was a big fan of the movie The Real Reason Men Commit Crimes.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I ordered that on pay-per-view. I love that movie.
Wow. Thank you. That was, that was a long time ago now, it seems, but that was the first thing I ever did, first movie,
Mm-hmm.
Independent film. 2 movies that I did. It's funny because 2 of them that I did were they were pretty much just put on the shelf, and it was both times because of wrestling, and both times it was done in conjunction with wrestling and WCW, and it was the synergy between the two. We were going to try to help promote both movies that I did. One for TNT, Movie of the Week, Shutterspeed, and then the first one, The Real Reason. And both times something happened, with Eric.
Right.
Eric got mad at the guy that directed it, Judson Vaughn, The Real Reason.
Right.
And he put the brakes on and just put it up on the shelf, and it's just been sitting there ever since. And then the TNT movie is, Eric Bischoff ended up, they let him go. They just got rid of him, and everything that was attached to Eric, they just sort of canned. So, that movie, they aired it 5 or 6 times, and the first time they aired it was a horrible time slot.
I think I saw it at 3 in the morning or 2 in the morning, something like that.
Horrible. And then the last time they showed it, all in 1 week, it was 5 or 6 showings in 1 week. The last one that they showed was on Saturday night at 8 o'clock, and that was the best rating of all. And it was indication, I read in some of the trade magazines that they made a mistake, that they should have just put it on, the first time on a good time slot, on a good night, and just, even though WCW was sinking and sinking fast, there was still some synergy there left, and it probably could have done something. But,
yeah,
that's the way it goes.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up, can I just throw you a few word associations? Basically, if you have,
I'm so bad at this. I'll do the best I can.
If you have a story, you can feel free to share it. If you just have one word, that works fine too. I mean, it's not a test. Don't worry.
I know. I'm just horrible at these.
All right. First name on the list is Ted DiBiase.
The original Seed.
Scott Steiner.
Freaky Biceps.
How about Rick Steiner?
Oh, man. Friend for life.
How about Ricky Steamboat?
Knew how to sell.
Mick Foley?
Found his niche.
AJ Styles?
Brother in Christ.
That's actually a good name for a tag team.
Brothers in Christ?
Well, you had Brothers in Pain, so.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Ric Flair.
Oh, man. There's so much I could say about Rick. Put me on the map.
Hulk Hogan.
The greatest of all time.
And the final one I have for you, actually I'll give you 2 more. For the second to last one, I know some of you probably don't know that well, but how about Vince McMahon?
He's a marketing genius.
And the final one I have for you is somebody we lost fairly recently. I have a feeling you were close to him. How about Road Warrior Hawk?
Man, I'll see him in eternity.
Were you close with Hawk?
You know what? Both the Road Warriors, they sort of took me under their wing early in my career when Crockett bought the UWF, and you know, they realized that I was an okay guy, you know, and we would split rooms, and you know, most of the time I stayed with Animal, because in those days Hawk was, you know, he was partying there, I mean, you know, heavily, and
right.
He was running with a different crowd in those days, but you know, I saw, this alone tells me that God is real. The change that I saw in Hawk, I knew him, you know, back in the day, and then I saw some of the things that he did, the way he treated people, anyone. It didn't matter who they were, wrestling fans. I mean, he was a totally transformed person, and you know, there are some people that will dispute that, but you know what? There's no way you can, because he was a totally different guy.
Absolutely. Well, we can't thank you enough for your time. Everybody listening should check out www.sting/themovie.com. And thank you so much for coming on the show, and we wish you the best of luck with this project.
Thanks.